Thank you. Indeed, that was lovely. Well, good morning, everybody. Last week, Debbie was talking to us about being in the present, being here and now. This is where it happens. Let's not worry about the past. Let's not go to the future. What's here and now? And today, the title of the message is The Wind Against Your Face, as Victoria was talking about. I'm going to begin with a little story. It was this young guy, and probably had more money than he should have had because he was kind of frivolous. So he goes out and he buys this Ferrari GTO, really expensive, hot sports car. And he was so proud of it. He was just so excited. So he's going to go take it out for a spin. Gets out on the street and he's tooling along, comes to a stoplight, and this elderly gentleman next to him on a moped. They both stop at the stoplight, and the older guy's looking at him. He said, "Wow." He said, "That is some kind of car you got." "Yeah." Kid said, "Yeah, it cost $250,000 or whatever it was." And he said, could I look inside?" And the kid said, "Sure." So the old guy gets off the moped. He gets inside. He looks around. He said, "Wow, what a slick car this is. This is just amazing." Well, then the light changes, so he gets back on the moped, and the kid thought, well, now I got to really impress this guy. So he tromps it. Within a quarter of a mile, he's up to 160 miles. He's just, like, aren't I something? Then he looks in his rearview mirror, and he sees this, like, dot behind him. He's looking at it, and it's getting bigger, and it's faster, and he said, "What's gaining on me when I'm going this fast?" And all of a sudden, whoosh, something goes right by him. He couldn't even see what it was, but something passed him. The next thing he knew, he's watching this dot come back toward him. All of a sudden, whoosh, goes by. He says, "That's that old guy on the moped." How on earth can this guy on a moped pass my Ferrari, come back? He was just baffled. He looks in the rearview mirror. There's this dot coming at him again. And instead of going whoosh by him, whoosh, he hits him in the rear end. The guy falls off the moped. Kid gets out of the car and he says, "Gee," he said, I don't know what to do." He said, what can I do for you?" And the old man says, "Well, Sonny," he said, you can unhook my suspenders from your side view mirror." You get it? So do you ever feel like that you're kind of getting whipsawed, you're out of control, and the wind's in your face, but it doesn't necessarily feel good. You're like, whoa, what's going on? So This is the lesson today. The wind in our face doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's very challenging. And I think we also need to look at another saying we hear from time to time called the wind. You hear people talk about the winds of change in our life. And I'd like to review some of the things that have changed since the 1500s. In the 1500s, and I got a lot of this off the internet, so it's factual. In the 1500s, people took a bath once a year. And, of course, they all had these, these tubs. They didn't have bath tubs. They just had these round tubs that they'd take a bath in once a year. Was first the dad, first the man of the house, then the sons, then the wife, maybe the daughters, then, little kids. Last of all, of course, the little baby. By the time the baby gets in there, that water is so grimy. That's where the saying comes from, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater." Can't see the kid in there. Now, that was supposed to be in the 1500s, but I will tell you, I was born in 1947, and we lived in a little house. There were 3 of us kids at the time, and guess what? Saturday night was bath night, and we didn't have running water. We had a tub. I was going to call one of my sisters and say, was it the same tub they brought in from the barn that they mixed up the meat in? We raised mink, so they had to mix up the meat that they fed the mink. I think it was only for baths. but I wouldn't have known because I was a little kid. But anyway, Saturday night, that was, I think they just threw us all in the tub at the same time. But some things change, you know, things get better and better. So you go from the 1500s to the 1900s, and even then, only about 14% of the homes had bathtubs in them. About 8% of the homes had telephones. And, you know, it was so expensive to make a phone call, it would cost you about a half a month's salary to call from Denver to New York for 3 minutes. I mean, they're not like they are today where you can call anywhere. Just some things changed for the better, obviously. 10% of all U.S. physicians had a college education. Insulin and antibiotics hadn't been invented yet. Scotch tape, the crossword puzzles, can you believe it? That amazed me. Crossword puzzles, not invented yet in 1900. Canned beer and iced tea had not been invented. And, you know, change just continues to happen in our lives. Everybody probably watched the news this week. If you don't watch Wheel of Fortune, you saw on the national news that Pat Sajak, after 40 years, retired. He's off the air. Well, he's not really off the air. You can see him, I'm sure, 1 million times on the reruns. But that big change for a lot of us. And then I listen on the radio sometimes when I'm driving around. There's this kind of a shallow discussion show. 2 women, they're sister-in-laws, Lori and Julia. They've been on for 20 years, and they just kibitz. They talk about things like entertainment and what's going on in the Twin Cities, so forth and so on. But 20 years on the air, after June, they're gone. So change continues to happen. Some of it is good, some of it is hard for us to deal with. There's a writer and a speaker named Ralph Marston. He writes something called the Daily Motivator. I don't know if any of you follow it. He says this: the faster you move forward, the more the wind blows against your face. When you encounter much difficulty and resistance, it's because you're in the process of making significant progress, change. Those who have no problems are those who never venture out to accomplish anything. I think Dee Dee was reading about that. Those who face most challenges are those who end up creating the most value. When a particular problem arises, it is because you've progressed to the point where you can deal with it. When a challenge comes along, that's because you're truly ready for where it can bring you. See the obstacles as gateways, and you'll see their true value. Each new challenge is a stepping stone, a waypoint on the journey to real and meaningful accomplishment. So feel the stiff wind as it blows against your face, and know that what you're feeling is your rapid movement forward. So sometimes that resistance, we can be assured that when we're getting resistance, it does mean we're moving forward. And that's kind of a secular description. Ernest Holmes says in his chapter on immortality in his Science of Mind textbook, he says, nature will not let us stay in one place too long. She will let us stay just long enough to gather the experience necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. Nature demands change in order that we may advance. When change comes, we should welcome it with a smile on our lips and a song in our hearts. But we know that change doesn't always feel good. Michael Beckwith gives the example of the little chick in the egg, and many of you have heard this before, but when you think about this little chick, oh, he's so comfortable in that egg. This is a nice, safe place to be. Till he starts to grow and he gets a little bit bigger, it's getting a little cramped in there, and plus he's starting to pollute it with his own pollution. And it's getting unbearable after a while. And just before he's about to die, he thinks to himself, I gotta get out of here. He starts pecking, peck at the shell till he makes himself free. You know, that freedom's always been there, but it's when he gets to that point, he's finally breaking himself free. sees the world for the first time. Eric Butterworth says, pain is breaking through the shell of awareness. Edwin Gaines says that not all our good tastes like chocolate and smells like turkey and dressing. You know, sometimes our good is there, but we don't recognize it because it doesn't look good, it doesn't taste good, it doesn't smell good. In Romans 8:28, Paul says, and we know that all things work together for good to them who are called according to his purpose. And to me, you know, the word together, things do work together. And it puts me in mind of, in spite of appearances, I know there's something in the unseen, with a capital U, that's working for my greater good. So we know that sometimes we just can't see it. We just can't see it. Oftentimes, when change happens, if we don't see it, it's, oh boy, is this an opportunity? We think, oh no, what am I going to do? I got to figure out how to get through this, get through this obstacle. When I was a kid in our church, we had these, you know, how you have these tracts sitting in the little racks and stuff, and there was a tract in there that was a poem, and it was called The Weaver or something like that. And it started out like this. It said, my life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colors, he worketh steadily. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I, in foolish pride, forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Now, of course, we know that our higher power doesn't weave sorrow. We are responsible by making our decisions. We bring those things on ourselves. God doesn't say, oh, I think I'm going to make this day a particularly rough one for Marvin. You know, he doesn't say that. Oh, that's that Amber Alert. That's probably my phone. In, and I couldn't figure out. I thought I shut it off. Sorry about that. Amber Alert. Anyway, we, by making our decisions, bring on our own obstacles. But I like that idea. You know, when we look at like a weaving or something, it looks so pretty, but if you look at the other side, it doesn't look pretty at all. And the point is, sometimes that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the underside, the backside, instead of how beautiful it can be. Sort of like that story about Joseph in the Bible. You know, Joseph had all these brothers. They were jealous of him. Oh, God. He had a coat like this, coat of many colors. And his brothers he got from his dad. His brothers were jealous. So they took him out in the desert and they put him in a well. And they thought, he's just going to die down there. And they did that. And lo and behold, some caravan came along and they pulled him out of there. They took him to Egypt. I think they sold him. And he's kind of a servant in the court there. And I think the story is he is able to interpret dreams and do some pretty special things. And next thing you know, he's the right-hand man to the Pharaoh. Well, a famine takes place in the land where his brothers and his dad are living, and they hear that there's some food in Egypt, thanks to Joseph, who told them, you got to put away this food, because he had a dream about it. And so they go there, and they don't first recognize him, but when they finally recognize him, they're just horrified that, what we did to you, we're so sorry. They say, behold, we are your servants. They bent down, and he said, don't even think about it. He said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. In other words, look how I came, landed on my feet pretty good here. And so many times we're not able to see the good, and we have to be open to that. Sometimes, I thought there was a verse in the Bible thought there was a verse in the Bible that said, God will never give you more problems than you can handle, or something like that. Because when I was first married and I had my 2 little kids and I realized I was married to an alcoholic, I had a little issue with God about how much I could handle. And so I remember this one night, my husband didn't come home from work, must have been payday, and I walked into this, we had a walk-in closet with a full-length window in there for whatever reason. And I'm looking out that window, looking down the street, waiting for those headlights, right? Praying. God, I'll give you 60 seconds. I counted down. 60 seconds for God to bring those headlights down the street and into our driveway. I was very humble. I was beside myself. This was the only time in my life I can say I was in despair, not having any hope. I had no idea how this could ever work out well. I just couldn't see it at all. I was just miserable. And so I was yelling and swearing, and I told God, you told me that you would never give me more than I can bear, and can't you see this is, I mean, really, I was in rough shape. But then I remember that after I had that little tirade, I kind of collapsed on a chair, and I just said to God, give me peace, comfort me, give me strength to get through this. And when I prayed that way for strength and comfort and peace, I received that peace that passes all understanding, and I was able to move forward. And it wasn't long at all after that I was introduced to Al-Anon. And that introduction to Al-Anon changed my life. It really expanded my horizons as far as spirituality. Since where I came from, pretty much everybody was going to hell except this one little church in the country. And so when I got to Al-Anon, I realized they were much more tolerant of other faiths, other religions, and it made me more open when I got introduced to Science of Mind. So we can be comforted, remembering we got this inner strength. We're capable of meeting any situation because that very power that created everything that is the power within us. We can be comforted by that. And yet for most of us, when we run into challenges, what's the big bugaboo? Fear. Right away we're like, oh no. Just we need to remember. We can be comforted by remembering the universe remains intact. The universe isn't afraid. The universe isn't confused. We can remember that it's intact no matter how chaotic things may appear. And the universe is intact even though our challenges and our problems and our situations, our circumstances always change. When you think about it, if you've had some big problems in the past, big challenges, think about, what was that challenge I had, 5 years ago? You probably can't even remember it because it resolved itself, it evolved, it changed. How about some people in your life that you thought were ruining your life? Oh man, that person just makes my life miserable, makes my life hell. Where are they now? You've moved past it. How about a burden that you've carried? Maybe a secret you've kept on your own shoulders that you thought you couldn't share with anybody. Maybe you shared that secret and now you feel a burden lift. Where is that burden? It's gone. So we change, we evolve. So I'm going to suggest that this week you try this, that instead of telling your story, my story is my boss is a jerk. I've always worked for jerks. What's the common denominator there? Or I don't get along with my in-laws. They're terrible people. They're selfish. They're whatever. Or tell your story. My children don't obey me. My children are running wild. They're crazy. I can't control them. How about your finances? just can't seem ever to make ends meet, whatever it is, I'm going to suggest quit telling that story this week. Just don't tell that story. And instead ask yourself, what is that experience offering me? What am I learning from that experience? How can I grow from that experience? It's a little homework if you choose to do it. Joseph Campbell wrote, opportunities to find deeper powers within ourselves come when life is most challenging. You know, when things are going along well, you know, there's not a lot of growth there. It's great. But, you know, our lives, I think we can always expect we're going to have this going on to help us grow. Remember that nature will let you stay in one place just long enough to gather the experience necessary for the unfolding and the advancement of your soul. So we are going to have our ups and downs, so we can advance our souls. This eternal activity of creation, this ongoing activity of evolution in our souls, it can seem frightening, can seem very chaotic. But finally, remember the words from the I Ching, and those words are this: before brilliance comes chaos. So if you're having some chaos in your life, just know that there's brilliance on the other side of it. You can get through this. You've got a power within you to get through it. Remember that you're a brilliant light. Do not let that light be diminished when you're facing that wind coming in your face. Instead, know that this is simply a natural part of the process. We're going to get through this. So I would like to invite you to take a deep breath. I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment around these words. I know there is but one power in the universe, and it is the power that guides. It is wisdom, it is peace, it is love, it is all good. It has the perfect solution to any perceived dilemma in life. I know that I am one with it. It experiences life in, through, and as its creation, in, as, and through all its creation. And even though the winds of change and resistance, they've sometimes stopped me in my tracks. Sometimes I've buckled with fear for whatever I'm facing. And even though in the past I've sometimes forgotten who I am, that I am this vehicle for this power that is to experience life in, as, and through me. I set my intentions so that when the winds of change, when those winds of resistance come, I can just know that I'm making some progress. I'm growing. My soul is advancing. In gratitude that this is how the law works, it is done unto me as I believe, I release these words now to the beneficent conspiracy which does the work. So it is.